Interesting comments there. But so I'm asking, which market? Someone said, give me the address of that market.
So we can all go there.
Yeah, someone said, well, maybe it's a different market. In fact, someone said, the market that we both go to seems to be different. That the same kind of market he mentioned, that market price of rice jumped from 24,000 to 35,000 naira in 1 week.
Wow.
So we have to probe that market.
That's a lot, really.
Yeah, really. It is. It's a lot.
But, speaking about, they're all related these days. I mean, commodities, prices of goods in the markets, the economy, they're all just intertwined. And recently, the president, they held this ministerial review, just to assess themselves and see what are they doing, what should we expect from them moving forward. Haven't done that review mechanism, if we could call it that. So, data analyst joins us this morning, Babajide Ogun. So, good morning and thank you for coming on today. So, much as I don't know which markets you go to, so could you tell us now, in context of what's playing out, you've been looking into some figures yourselves, so sometimes we see that of the CBN, we see that of the MBS, and then even the former Minister of Agri was talking about how much we're spending on food imports. Look, what figures are you crunching up in all of this, Victory?
The most important thing is the rising prices. 2 centuries ago, French philosopher and writer Joseph Joubert said that it is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it. And so today, I would like to debate a lot of things that are going on. The first is, my debate standpoint and my perspective is that Nigeria is an ant that has the potential to be an elephant. And I'll share 3 reasons why my debate is that, why Nigeria is an ant that has the potential to become an elephant. The first is that within the last 48 hours, we've seen the new debt figures from the Debt Management Office that shows that Nigeria's total debt, which is the federal government, the states, and the Federal Capital Territories, 31 trillion naira, Chamberlain. Now, a lot of Nigerians are concerned about Nigeria's debt. And yes, we should be concerned because the debt is rising faster than the revenue. But here's what is more important. 31 billion naira, Chamberlain, is just $80 billion. $80 billion. If you pick up the balance sheets of Apple, that US company that we all buy their phones, Apple has a liability of $240 billion. In other words, Apple owes 3 times what Nigeria owes. Just like that, just think about that for a minute. One company owes 3 times what the entire country owes. So Nigeria is an ant that has the potential to become an elephant. Now, the second reason is, let's look at our revenue. Last year, the federal government earned only 4.2 trillion naira. 4.2 trillion naira. The federal government of the United States earned in equivalent naira terms 1.2 quadrillion naira. You heard me right. The federal government of the United States earned 1.2 quadrillion naira. Kayode, here's why this is very important. It means that what the United States government earns in 1 day is what the federal government of Nigeria earns in 10 months. Again, Nigeria is an ant that has the potential to become an elephant. And finally, I would like to talk about why a lot of Nigerians are bothered about what is going on, the stability of the exchange rates. The central bank shows that we have about $33 billion in our foreign reserves. But here's the facts. The fact shows that if you look at the balance sheet of Amazon, that company, that's one company in the United States where a lot of Nigerians buy things from. Amazon has a cash balance of over $36 billion. You heard me right. You heard me right. In other words, that company in the US, Amazon, has more cash balance than the central bank and indeed all of Nigeria has in its external reserves. And so the conclusion is, yes, while Nigeria has that potential, yes, the giant of Africa, the moment and what we see today is Nigeria, if we look at it from that right perspective, is an ant, but it has the potential to become an elephant.
Well, at the moment, we're grappling with so many things, one of that happens to be the prices, different prices, that of the fuel price. They've looked at it and they keep doing some comparative analysis from where they're coming from, where they are, and where are they likely to find themselves in a couple of years or many years to come if we're to move from being an ant to an elephant. So how do we deal, or what did you find about that comparison that they're doing about the fuel price?
So what we've seen is a lot of people discuss the petrol price just from what has happened within the last 6 years. But the proper way to do it is to look at what has happened in the Fourth Republic since we started democracy in 1999. And if you take a close look at that, if you look at that information that looks at the history and the movement of our petrol price since 1999, here's what you'll find. Every Nigerian president that has spent at least 4 years has battled with this problem. So when we started democracy, May 29, 1999, fuel was sold for 20 naira. By the time President Obasanjo left, it had moved from 20 naira to 75 naira. President Umaru Yar'Adua is the only president that attempted or that believed that petrol should be sold a bit better, and that was because Nigeria was earning a bit more. So we saw that fuel moved from 75 naira to 65 naira. But the evidence shows that if he had stayed for 4 years or 8 years, he would have understood the problem better. Under President Jonathan, we've seen the price change, moved from 65 to 87 with a lot of volatilities in between. And right now, we've seen that price move from what it started as at May 29, 2015, 87 naira, to where we are now of above 150 naira. Here's what it all means. It means that the petrol price is not just a Buhari problem. It has been a problem for every Nigerian president. And so, yes, we are now moving and taking that bolder and perhaps the right move by making sure that we totally take our hands off the subsidy. Here's why this is important. People have said, yes, the crude oil prices have dropped, yet the naira price of petrol is rising. So here's the right answer, Chamberlain. What is happening is whenever they talk about, you hear that discussion of crude oil prices, crude oil is always priced in dollars. For you have $40 per barrel, $38 per barrel, $54 per barrel. Nobody prices crude oil in naira. It is the global and world accepted benchmark. So here's what it means. Even though crude oil price drops, if the exchange rate, if the naira weakens, it means that petrol will be sold for a higher price, even though there's a drop in the per barrel cost of crude oil. And that is the challenge every Nigerian president is being faced with. It is that the naira has been getting weaker since 1999, and the economy hasn't been as productive as it should be. And that is why each president has tried to remove the amount that is going into a lot of wasteful spending going into subsidy and trying to take more money into some other productive sectors.
And we know that this usually is connected with revenue. Yes, globally, COVID-19 hit a lot of countries, but there are those who believe here that we could actually earn a lot more, even though today they're reporting that the government says now, having removed the subsidy, will earn 1 trillion naira annually. But many think that it could be a little more, so some disagree with that. What figures did you find?
Now, the fact shows that, Chamberlain, that even if the government wanted to continue paying the subsidy, the evidence shows that we no longer have the money to pay the subsidy. What do I mean? Let's take a look at that information that reveals how much the federal government earned in the first quarter of this year. And from that evidence, it tells us that within the first 90 days of 2020, the federal government earned 865 billion naira. You heard me right. 865 billion naira came into the federal government's pocket. But here's the bigger challenge. And if you look at that information, so the bigger challenge is not just the revenue, it is how much you're spending on interest payments. And the evidence shows that 85% of the earnings that the federal government earns, the 85% of the federal government's revenue goes to pay interest on domestic debt, over 600 billion naira, and interest on foreign debt. And so the conclusion is the government really, if it were to make a good decision, the government had to stop paying the subsidy. Because at the moment, 85% of Nigerians' federal government's earnings goes to paying domestic and foreign debt. And if you include how much money goes into paying salaries, overheads, you then realize that, and the right question is subsidy the most effective use of the federal government's money?
Okay, now here's this part. We'll need a lot of help here now, because, I mean, now that all of these resources were challenged by resources, what we spend money on may be reviewed. So I don't know if Ayo Kaide have been going to the supermarket previously. We may need to go to another kind of market such that the resources we have can be evenly spread. So tell us, what have we been spending money on? Perhaps it could help us in what should we spend money on in future.
So recently, that information, the National Bureau of Statistics did some research on how individuals like Ayo and Kayode spend their money. And the evidence shows that the number one thing Nigerians spend their money on isn't transport. Transport is important. Transport takes 6% of Nigeria's, of people's spending. But the first thing is food. More than half of people's daily spending goes to food. And we're able to see that while what is going to happen now is the cost of transportation is expected to go up a bit, will Nigerians spend more money on food? Perhaps no. What we'll see is the other items that Nigerians spend money on. For instance, we most likely will see Nigerians reducing their spending on household goods. At the moment, household good accounts for about 3% of what Nigerians spend money on. So we might see Nigerians spending a little less on household goods. We might see Nigerians spending a little less on their entertainment spending. Nigerians spend approximately 1% of their daily spending on entertainment. So that is likely going to be the case. It is not likely that Nigerians will spend less money on food because the cost of food is rising, but we might see some Nigerians spending less money on other items.
Does that suggest that any of the MDAs we have that are best performing or worst performing, are those the ones in the food sector? Which of them do?
So we've seen the ministerial retreat, and I'm sure the president and the vice president I've sent a clear message to all the ministers. But here's perhaps the best way to look at how the ministries have performed. We understand that there are 46 economic sectors in Nigeria. And the evidence we have today shows that since the second quarter of this year, if you look at that real GDP figure, the evidence shows that only 10 sectors out of Nigeria's 46 sectors have experienced real growth. Only 10 out of 46. So we have 10 sectors that have experienced real growth since the second quarter of 2015, and we have 36 sectors that have declined in the second quarter of 2020 relative to second quarter of 2015. So what sectors are we seeing some level of good performance? We're seeing growth in the broadcasting sector that we're involved in. We are seeing growth in the crop sector. We're seeing growth in the livestock sector. We're seeing some growth in the forestry sector as well. And we're seeing some growth in the telecommunications sector. The sector that has seen the highest decline is the oil refining sector, and that offers the Nigerian government a lot of revenue. So going forward, the government needs to focus on not just these 10 sectors that are growing, but these 36 sectors that have been declining since relative to 2015.
With these figures, Jide, definitely, maybe you are calling for another ministerial review. But we want to thank you very much, Babajide Ogunsanwo, Channels TV.
And don't forget, Nigeria is an ant that has the potential to become an elephant.
Doesn't sound...
There you go. That is the show today. So on behalf of Ayo Makinde, Kaide Okikelu, and me, Chamberlain, so have a good weekend.